world is one. You're watching Gravitas with me, Hem Kaur Saroya. Let's get started. On Gravitas tonight, is Netanyahu fighting a losing battle? In a rare admission, the IDF spokesman said that Hamas is an idea that cannot be eliminated, that the Hamas ideology cannot be destroyed. And this comes in sharp contrast to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's claims that Israel will not stop till Hamas is completely annihilated. Is Netanyahu's war effort in Gaza a futile one? We will explore this on the show tonight. Now, with tensions high as ever on all fronts, the war in West Asia is expanding, threatening to breach the border with Europe. The leader of Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has threatened war against Cyprus. We'll tell you about this on the show tonight. Also, Xi Jinping has signaled another military purge with the aim of cracking down on corruption within PLA ranks. Stay tuned for that report. And facing turbulence yet again, Boeing's curse continues. We'll tell you all about Boeing's unending woes in a short while from now. Also on the show tonight, we tell you all about the NEET UG 2024 row. And then an AI-based tool may be able to help detect Parkinson's disease up to 7 years before symptoms appear. We'll tell you all about this breakthrough on the show tonight. Hamas cannot be defeated. We're not saying this, the Israeli military is. This is a statement made by the spokesperson of the Israeli army. Almost unbelievable that an army should make such an assessment about its enemy after months of intense war, a punishing war, particularly when it is made by the Israeli army. Yet, that's exactly what IDF spokesperson has said. The Prime Minister of the country, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has based his whole strategy on the complete defeat of Hamas, who insists that he won't stop until Hamas is defeated. His opponents have now begun to whisper that he took that position in order to ensure that he remains Prime Minister, since he is most unlikely to be replaced while the war continues. After all, political change can only take place during a long ceasefire. It's safe to say then, Israel's military leadership and Israel's Prime Minister don't see eye to eye. A rift that has increasingly spilled out into the open. Of course, the Israeli military was quick to issue a clarification, but for the rest of us around the world, it raised a big question. If Israeli army feels Hamas cannot be defeated, then what is it doing in Gaza? The war is in its 9th month. What does Israel plan to do next? After more than 8 months into the war in Gaza, sparked by Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel, the country has failed to crush Hamas from Gaza. That was Netanyahu's big promise before declaring war in Gaza, to eliminate the Islamist group from the Palestinian enclave. that and to safely bring back Israeli citizens taken hostage by Hamas. Yet, 9 months into the war, Israel's war against Hamas has only brought widespread devastation. Now, after all these months, Israel's top army spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, says that Hamas cannot be eliminated. Speaking to Israel's Channel 13 broadcaster, Hagari said, I'm quoting here, "This business of destroying Hamas, making Hamas disappear, it's simply throwing sand in the eyes of the public." To put it simply, Hagari said that the idea that Israel can destroy Hamas or make Hamas disappear is misleading the public. His comment is a rare, direct rebuke from the Israeli military of how Prime Minister Netanyahu has alienated the main aim of the war in Gaza, which he says is total victory over Hamas and returning Israeli hostages. Remember, on multiple occasions, the Israeli Prime Minister has said that only the eradication of Hamas can bring an end to the war. He has rejected series of proposals for possible alternatives to Hamas. He has rejected America's plan to bring in the Palestinian Authority. He has rejected Arab calls for a Palestinian unity government. It's for these reasons that military analysts as well as former Israeli officials have questioned whether installing a new government in Gaza was ever possible. Ironically, Netanyahu may have helped Hamas survive. For in any political settlement backed by Egypt, Qatar, the UAE, Hamas might have had to make way for a different government in Gaza. Now Hamas has survived the Israeli military's most brutal assaults, but Israeli politics has not paused. And the Israeli street is aware that there must be change in its leadership if the region is to see a glimmer of peace again. There's so little faith in Netanyahu that even those who propped him up at a time when the country was in a state of emergency have been forced to resign. I'm talking about Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, who quit Netanyahu's small war cabinet earlier this month amid disagreements over the direction of the war in Gaza. After the two key members resigned, Netanyahu was then forced to dissolve the war cabinet. But let's stay on the topic of discontent over the direction of the war. Last month, Netanyahu insisted once again that there will be no permanent ceasefire in Gaza until Hamas's military and governing capabilities are destroyed and all hostages are released. And that was after US President Joe Biden announced to the world that Israel had proposed a three-stage plan to Hamas aimed at reaching a permanent ceasefire. Meanwhile, in Gaza, 8 months into the war, there has been no sign of let-up in the fighting. Efforts by international mediators backed by the United States have so far failed to persuade Israel and Hamas to agree to a ceasefire. In the midst of all this, the widening rift between the military leadership and Netanyahu surely does not bode well. Remember, Netanyahu is increasingly facing pressure from the Biden administration to accept a ceasefire proposal. President Biden says that it will lead to an end to the war. But this week, Netanyahu opened a new dispute with the administration, accusing Washington of withholding weapons and ammunition from Israel. The White House dismissed the claims, saying it paused only one shipment of bombs over concerns about the potential killing of civilians in Israel's operation in the city of Rafah in southern Gaza. Now take a look at these pictures on your screens right now. That's what Gaza looks like today. A picture of complete devastation and death. Just today, Israeli military carried out a series of deadly strikes in central Gaza. In western Rafah, Israeli tanks have pushed deeper, firing shells at displaced people's tents. As of today, over 37,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 85,000 Palestinians have been wounded in Israeli military attacks on Gaza since the 7th of October. In just the past 24 hours, 35 Palestinians have been killed and 130 have been wounded, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. Meanwhile, on the other side of the border in Israel, anti-government protesters, including relatives of captives, block major highways. Israelis are calling to oust the Prime Minister. The pressure is building on Netanyahu. You see, the world knows what apparently the Israeli Prime Minister refuses to see. Of course, Hamas is responsible for committing crimes on the 7th of October, but the horrors for which Hamas must be held accountable do not minimize the culpability of Netanyahu and the yes-men he surrounds himself with. We know now for sure that IDF knew of Hamas's plan to kidnap 250 Israelis before the 7th of October attack. A newly surfaced document has revealed that IDF and intelligence systems had detailed knowledge of Hamas's plan some 3 weeks prior to the attack. Israel knew what was on the horizon, yet nothing was done to stop it. In light of this information becoming public, isn't the only appropriate thing for Netanyahu to do is to resign? But there seems to be no remorse. In fact, in response to the IDF spokesperson's admission that Hamas cannot be defeated, the Prime Minister's office has pushed back. Netanyahu's office reiterated that the destruction of Hamas is the major goal of the war, a goal that the IDF is committed to. But the contradictory statements, yet another example of mounting tensions between the Israeli military and the Prime Minister. It's clear that Netanyahu's refusal to see the truth is timing peace efforts in Gaza. Now, even the Israeli military is admitting openly that Hamas cannot be defeated. What is then Netanyahu waiting for? How long does he plan to drag the war? How long till he comes to the realization that his efforts to prolong his grasp on power is just a futile exercise? Now, the map of the Israel-Hamas war is expanding, spreading dangerously from Gaza to Lebanon, Red Sea, Iran, and now it threatens to reach Europe. Today, Hezbollah threatened war against a member of the European Union. You heard that right. The leader of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has threatened war against Cyprus, warning to attack the country if it allows Israel to launch military operations from its territory. On Wednesday, the head of Lebanon's Hezbollah said that Israel won't be safe if a full-fledged war breaks out between the two countries. For the first time, the Hezbollah leader also widened threats to neighboring country Cyprus, as well as other parts of the Mediterranean. A day later, in a televised address, the leader of the group warned that no place would be safe from their missiles and drones in the event of a broader war. Not stopping there, Nasrallah said that Hezbollah had a bank of targets it could hit in precision strikes. Now, to quote the Hezbollah chief, Israel knows what awaits it in the Mediterranean is very big. In the face of a battle of this magnitude, it knows that it must now wait for us on land, in the air and at sea. A stark warning indeed. For months, for about 8 months now, Lebanon-based pro-Iranian group Hezbollah has been trading fire with Israel in parallel with the Gaza war. On Tuesday, the group published what it said was drone footage of sensitive military sites deep in Israeli territory. But there can't be smoke without fire, so what triggered this reaction from Hezbollah chief? It was Israel. You see, on Tuesday, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz had warned that a decision on an all-out war with Hezbollah was coming soon. Not just that, but Israel's military also announced that operational plans for an offensive in Lebanon were approved and validated. With belligerent rhetoric escalating and the Lebanon-based group issuing surveillance drone footage of sites in Israel, there's mounting fear that a full-blown war between Hezbollah and Israel is on the cards. Remember, the fact that Nasrallah threatened Cyprus is significant. Cyprus is EU member state. Hezbollah has also accused Cyprus of allowing Israel to use its airports and bases for military exercises. Its chief has claimed that opening Cypriot airports and bases for the Israeli government means that the Cypriot government has become part of the war, and Hezbollah will deal with it as part of the war. What does Cyprus have to say about all of this? It denies taking sides. Cypriot President has denied any suggestion that Cyprus was taking sides in the conflict. Now, referring to the shipments of aid from Cyprus to Gaza, he said, and I'm quoting here, "Cyprus is not part of the problem, it is part of the solution. That role is evident. For example, through the humanitarian aid corridor, which has been acknowledged not only by the Arab world, but from the international community." Remember, Cyprus is not known to offer any land or base facilities to the Israeli military, but has in the past allowed Israel to use its airspace, its flight information region, to occasionally conduct air drills. In 2023, Israel held joint military exercises with Cyprus. The two countries also signed an agreement that also included Greece that year to step up defense cooperation. But it is important to note that Israel is not known to have used Cyprus's facilities during the conflict. Still, the intensifying exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah have displaced tens of thousands of people on both sides of the border. It has also caused casualties in Lebanon and Israel, although the two sides have not been drawn into an all-out war. The United States is leading a diplomatic push to de-escalate the situation. White House advisor Amos Hochstein is visiting both countries this week. The official from Washington is expected to hold discussions and find a way to de-escalate matters. That is the need of the hour, de-escalation, especially as Israeli officials have repeatedly said that they are prepared to take military action in the absence of a diplomatic resolution. While announcing plans for an offensive, the Israeli military also said that its officers had taken decisions on increasing the readiness of troops in the field. That, of course, came after Hezbollah's video, which showed drone footage of the Israeli territory. But it is important to note that Hezbollah, it's one of the world's most heavily armed non-state actors. It controls southern Lebanon and is the country's most potent political and military force. The drone footage and the threat to attack Cyprus is its message to Israel. Israel says it is ready for any scenario, but can the world afford the Gaza war to expand? Over in China, Chinese President Xi Jinping is redoubling efforts to weed out corruption and enforce loyalty in the military. Addressing top military officials, Xi Jinping called for deep reflection from the armed forces while warning against the dangers of corruption and ideological slippage in the People's Liberation Army. Addressing the Central Military Commission officials, Xi Jinping said, and I'm quoting here, "The gun barrel must always be grasped by people who are loyal and reliable to the party, and combat effectiveness can only be forged through strict discipline." He added that there must be no place in the military for corrupt elements to hide. The Chinese president also urged the PLA to eradicate conditions that breed corruption by expanding its toolbox to tackle hidden corruption. He said the PLA elites should never forget the revolutionary spirit of the Communist Party founders, to stay loyal and steel themselves for an unstable and rapidly changing world. Xi Jinping, however, did not mention individuals in his speech. Over the past year, Chinese authorities have removed over a dozen senior generals of the PLA and defense industry executives for graft-related acts. All right, and we now shift our focus to the ongoing Boeing crisis. Relatives of the victims from two fatal 737 MAX crashes are urging the Justice Department to impose a fine of around $25 billion on Boeing. The families, represented by lawyer Paul Castle, argue that Boeing's actions led to the deadliest corporate crime in U.S. history, warranting the maximum penalty. They suggest that between $14 billion to $22 billion of the fine could be suspended if Boeing allocates those funds towards an independent corporate monitor and safety compliance improvements.
That safety, that number one priority of Boeing, of their CEOs, of their management, of their engineer, doesn't mean anything when 346 people died. We are here today and driving here. It doesn't matter how far, because all I could think is the 6 minutes and 4 seconds of my daughter on that Boeing 37 MAX. Did she cry for me? Did she know that will be his last breath? Did someone hold her hands? So Kahon, Boeing, CEO, management, did you hear my daughter cry? I want them to answer and give us all the transparency. And I want them to be held accountable for murdering 346 lives.
Now, the Justice Department in May concluded that Boeing breached the 2021 Deferred Prosecution Agreement. This agreement was put in place after 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. The crashes were linked to the aircraft's Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, and resulted in the plane's global grounding for 20 months. Recently, Boeing argued it did not violate the agreement. But officials cited an incident on the 5th of January with an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet as evidence of ongoing safety issues. Federal prosecutors have until July 7th to decide whether to pursue a criminal case against Boeing or negotiate a plea deal. Meanwhile, Boeing's Starliner program, designed to ferry astronauts to the International Space Station, has encountered its own setbacks. A mission currently underway with astronauts Williams and Wilmore on board was supposed to be a crowning achievement. However, leaks and thruster issues have forced NASA and Boeing to extend the crew's stay on the ISS for further analysis. This delay adds to a string of problems for Starliner, which has been plagued by years of delays and overruns, costing Boeing over $1 billion. The recent events raise questions about the firm's commitment to safety. The 737 MAX crashes exposed potential flaws in the development and certification process. Families of the victims argue that Boeing prioritized profits over safety. Now, with the Starliner program, there are concerns about adequate testing procedures. NASA has acknowledged the troubles and said there was room for improvement. Boeing, on the other hand, once again is trying to focus on optics rather than safety measures. Now, the real question the company needs to answer is, should it be focusing on safety protocols rather than PR? Well, at least that is what the victims' families are voicing. Senator Richard Blumenthal, who recently chaired a hearing of Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun, has demanded prosecution. Listen to this.
Have a duty to demand the highest safety standards and insist that every installation is properly documented and ensure that speak up means, in fact, speak up, not shut up, as it is meant all too often. Boeing needs to stop thinking about the next earning call and start thinking about the next generation.
And in India, it is the NEET UG 2024 row that has raised significant concerns among students, parents, educational stakeholders. In the latest, the Supreme Court today issued a notice on a plea by the National Testing Agency, which sought the transfer of petitions relating to the NEET UG 2024 exams from the High Court to the Supreme Court. The bench has stayed the proceedings before different high courts, while also reiterating that they will not stop the counselling process. This is the latest, but let me give you a quick recap of all that has transpired so far. NEET UG, or the National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test for undergraduates, it's a crucial examination for medical aspirants in India for admissions to medical and other related courses. The NEET UG exam for this year, 2024, was conducted on the 5th of May, with over 24 lakh candidates appearing across 4,750 centres. The results for the same were announced on the 4th of June, 10 days ahead of the scheduled announcement date, that was for the 14th of June. An unprecedented 67 candidates scored a perfect 720 out of 720. And I need to stress here that this volume of perfect scores, that's a rarity. And that's exactly what led to suspicions about potential malpractices. 6 of these top-scoring candidates were from the same examination centre in Haryana. Numerous allegations emerged regarding question paper leaks, which cast doubt on the integrity of the examination process. These are the allegations being investigated, and the Supreme Court, it has directed the National Testing Agency, the NTA, to respond to these claims. The NTA, it initially awarded grace marks to 1,563 candidates due to delays experienced at some exam centres. This decision, it led to protests and legal challenges, resulting in the withdrawal of that decision to give grace marks. Now, on the 13th of June, the NTA informed the Supreme Court that the scorecards of the 1,563 candidates who were awarded grace marks in the NEET UG 2024 exam would be cancelled. Instead, these candidates would have an option to reappear for the exam on the 23rd of June, the results of which will be declared before the 30th of June. Be that as it may, protests erupted nationwide, with students demanding a thorough investigation into the alleged irregularities. Prominent student organizations like the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad and the National Students Union of India played a significant role in these protests. Multiple petitions were filed in various high courts, and the Supreme Court has scheduled hearings to address these issues comprehensively. The NTA has maintained that all standard procedures were followed and that compensatory measures were taken to address genuine grievances. A vacation bench headed by Justice Vikram Nath and S.V. Bhatti issued notices to the centre as well as the NTA. The next hearing is for the 8th of July. Important to note that 6th of July is the date for the commencement of the counselling sessions. As per the Supreme Court, even if there is a 0.001% negligence on the part of anyone, it should be thoroughly dealt with. Adding, and I'm quoting here, "We all know the labour children undergo, especially for preparing for this exam." The NEET UG 2024 controversy highlights significant challenges in maintaining the integrity and fairness of high-stakes examinations in India. Also, in another development, the Indian Education Ministry also scrapped the UGC NET examination. The NDA conducts the UGC NET twice every year in June and December. The exams were held in 2 shifts across various cities on the 18th of June. Over 9 lakh candidates had appeared for the exam across 317 cities. The NET UGC is an exam for entry-level teaching jobs in Indian universities and also for admissions to PhD programs. As investigations continue and legal proceedings unfold, the outcomes will be crucial in shaping future examination protocols and ensuring trust among candidates and their families. Now, you might have heard the saying, play stupid games and win stupid prizes. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who more likely than not has but 2 weeks left in public life, realized this the hard way. Sunak's hotline became a hate line as he endured 60 minutes of abuse and embarrassment. It began as a phone-in titled, "Rishi Sunak takes your calls." on Nick Ferrari's LBC show on Wednesday. However, it was not long before Sunak faced a grilling from callers. To begin with, the caller said, and I'm quoting here, "I think you've become a pound-shop Nigel Farage," and accused Sunak of being obsessed with divisive culture wars. "I'm very sorry to hear you feel that way." That's what Sunak said. Sunak was also asked about John Caldwell, Phones for You founder and a former major Tory donor, and Manchester United co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe throwing their weight behind Keir Starmer's party. To which Sunak replied, I'm quoting, "They're two of Britain's richest men. They can probably afford Labour's tax rises." Now, the Conservatives are seeking to use the tax as a key issue and are stepping up attacks on Labour's plans in a desperate bid to shift their stubborn double-digit poll deficit. Another caller called in to press the Prime Minister over what the Conservative Party has, or in fact hasn't, delivered for young people in Britain. She said, and I'm quoting, "As a young person in this country, everything about my future feels uncertain after 14 years now of Tory austerity." Sunak claimed he wanted young people to feel confident about their future and focused on his aim to help young people to be able to buy a house. However, his answers failed to impress the caller, who accused Sunak of lying and reflected the discontent felt by many young people in the country. Later, Sunak dodged questions about whether he would welcome Farage into the Conservative Party after the election or work with Reform UK. He gave the same answer when quizzed on reports that Tory leadership hopefuls are already vying to replace him as party leader after the election. Now, amid persistently low poll ratings, Sunak declined to give his campaign a mark out of 10. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I'm not interested in those kinds of things." Facing a series of questions about what happens if the Tories are defeated, Sunak insisted he would, of course, still serve for a full parliamentary term as Richmond and Northampton's MP. Sunak was also confronted over the explosion of the use of food banks, with a member of the public asking him, how can a Prime Minister who is richer than the King relate to any of our needs and struggles? The failed phone-in attempt comes as Nigel Farage's Reform UK continues its rise in the polls. It has hit a record rating for the fourth day in a row in Bloomberg's UK poll of polls on Thursday, and not to anyone's surprise, Sunak's governing Conservatives have hit a new low. Reforms is at 14.9% according to Bloomberg Composite, and the Tories are on 20.9%, an all-time low in the series. Now, north of India remains in the grip of a long heat wave. The country has recorded more than 40,000 suspected heat stroke cases this summer. More than 100 people have also died due to the heat. It's prompted the government to issue an advisory to hospitals to set up special units to cater to such patients. 17 people were reported to have died due to a heat stroke in Delhi in the past 72 hours. The victims died of heat strokes at 3 hospitals, and the government has sent officials to assess the exact number of deaths due to heat stroke. The Union Health Ministry has reiterated its guidelines on heat-related illnesses. The guidelines direct states to report heat-related deaths and total deaths from all health facilities on the Integrated Health Information Platform. The guidelines also ask states to maintain a digital list of all heat stroke cases and deaths, whether confirmed or suspected. They are told to undertake an investigation of all suspected heat-related deaths by a medical officer or epidemiologist to understand the circumstances of the suspected deaths. The Indian Met Department has issued a red alert for a severe heat wave in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The heat wave is expected to subside in Jammu, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Bihar, Jharkhand and Odisha. However, Haryana and Delhi will continue to experience heat wave with increased intensity on the 23rd of June. Meanwhile, in what may come as some respite, the Weather Department has said that monsoon is likely to make a foray into Delhi NCR around the 30th of June and that there has been some rainfall activity in Bihar.
There has been rainfall activity in Bihar. For Punjab, Haryana and Delhi NCR, we have issued an orange alert. But for West Uttar Pradesh, we have issued a red alert for the next 2 days. In Delhi NCR, the temperature is expected to be around 40 degrees Celsius. Monsoon is expected to hit Delhi NCR around 30th June. Even today, we can expect dust storms and light intensity rainfall activity in Delhi.
अफेक्ट कर रहा है नॉर्थ वेस्ट इंडिया को और उसके कारण हल्का फुल्का रेनफॉल एक्टिविटी, थंडरस्टॉर्म या डस्टस्टॉर्म एक्टिविटी रहेगा.
Now, days after a human finger was found in ice cream in India, more disturbing instances have come to light. These alarming incidents have raised concerns about health, safety and food security. In a shocking incident, a resident from Bengaluru ordered an Xbox controller from Amazon and upon opening the package, found a live cobra taped to the package. Fortunately, she is safe. In another incident, a family found a dead mouse in a Hershey's chocolate syrup bottle ordered from the e-commerce platform Zepto. 3 people consumed the contaminated syrup and 1 person was hospitalized. Another alarming incident emerged from Gujarat's Jamnagar, where a fried frog was found inside a Balaji chips packet. Following the incident, the authorities summoned the local dealer. A new study has brought promising news to the field of medical science. Scientists have developed a simple AI-based blood test that can detect Parkinson's disease up to 7 years before symptoms appear. This groundbreaking research was led by teams from University College London in the UK and University Medical Centre in Germany. Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disorder with no current cure. Its symptoms include tremors, slow movement, gait issues and memory problems. Now, commenting on the findings of his study, researcher Michael Bartels said that by identifying certain proteins in the blood, potential Parkinson's patients can be detected years in advance, and this early detection could allow for earlier drug therapies, potentially slowing down or even preventing the progression of the disease. So how did AI help in the disease's early detection? Well, using machine learning, which is a type of AI, the researchers analyzed blood samples from 72 patients with rapid eye movement behavior disorder or RBD. This disorder causes individuals to physically act out their dreams unknowingly. Additionally, the research team noted that 75 to 80% of the people with RBD developed an abnormal protein buildup in their brains, similar to those with Parkinson's disease. The research outlined that the AI tool analyzed the blood samples and found that almost 80% of RBD patients showed signs of an age-related brain disease. To test the tool's accuracy in predicting Parkinson's, the patients were studied for 10 years. The AI tool directly identified 16 patients who developed Parkinson's, predicting the disease up to 7 years in advance. Countries wishing to join BRICS must not engage in unilateral sanctions, according to Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. At a Moscow press conference, Ryabkov highlighted this as a principal criterion for BRICS membership, particularly emphasizing the prohibition of sanctions against any current BRICS members, especially Russia. Russia's statement comes as BRICS, a bloc originally comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, continues to grow. Recently, BRICS expanded by including Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran and the United Arab Emirates, now collectively known as BRICS Plus. This expansion underscores the bloc's increasing influence and its desire to promote a multilateral global economic order. The significance of the statement lies in the geopolitical and economic landscape it helps shape. BRICS, with its growing membership, aims to counterbalance Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. By insisting on non-participation in unilateral sanctions, BRICS positions itself as a champion of sovereignty and non-interference, appealing to countries frustrated with Western economic pressures and sanctions. Now, the economic implications of BRICS expansion and its anti-sanction stance are significant. For one, it strengthens the group's bargaining power on the global stage, particularly in trade negotiations and international economic forums. As more countries join BRICS, the bloc's collective economic output and market size increase, enhancing its influence over global economic policies. Moreover, for countries joining BRICS, the anti-sanctions policy offers protection against the economic fallout from Western sanctions, and this is particularly appealing for nations like Iran and Russia, which have faced extensive sanctions from the United States and the EU. Now, BRICS' condition for new members to issue unilateral sanctions signals its commitment to fostering an alternative economic order. This policy not only strengthens internal unity but also attracts countries seeking to avoid repercussions of Western economic sanctions, thereby reshaping the global economic landscape. All right, moving on now. The South China Sea has been witnessing some serious escalation between the Philippines and China. On Wednesday, the Philippines military said that the Chinese Coast Guard rammed and boarded Filipino Navy boats in a violent confrontation. Filipino military chief alleged that the Chinese boarders were armed with swords, spears and knives in the incident off 2nd Thomas Shoal. Here's the report with more details.
This video released by the Philippines shows Chinese Coast Guard vessels ramming rigid-hull inflatable boats of the Philippine Navy in the South China Sea. The military says a Navy sailor suffered a serious injury as a result during a resupply mission on Monday. It called the incident an intentional high-speed ramming. On Wednesday, the Philippine Foreign Ministry denounced the moves as illegal and aggressive, while urging China to avoid actions that endanger sailors and vessels in the disputed waters. Philippine military officials said China's Coast Guard personnel were carrying knives and spears, looted firearms, and, quote, deliberately punctured Philippine boats involved in the mission to resupply its troops stationed on the 2nd Thomas Shoal. China's Coast Guard disputed the statement. It says the Philippine vessel deliberately and dangerously approached a Chinese ship, forcing it to take control measures. A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry said the measures were aimed at stopping illegal fishing and that no direct measures were taken against Philippine personnel. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, including the 2nd Thomas Shoal. An international tribunal dismissed China's expansive claims in 2016, but the country has repeatedly said Philippine vessels illegally intrude into the waters around disputed shoals.
And a new messiah has emerged to save the fractured sport of golf. Golf's TV ratings have been down this year, but Bryson DeChambeau's US Open win has energized fans once again. The 30-year-old isn't your average golfer. He plays to the gallery and he is without a doubt the people's champion. Take a look.
He is the toast of golf at the moment. Bryson DeChambeau is the people's champion.